One thing you'll notice that we tend to have a fair number of panel conversations. This month it's really focused on one topic, one particular person who's going to be providing a significant amount of feedback. Robert's background is long and storied. I will let him share that with you. And oh, by the way, he is also the VP of our association, so that works out fairly well as well. So with that, Robert, the floor is yours. Thank you. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Oh, wow. Great. Awesome. Okay. So there should be a little bit of audio that is going to come through on a few slides. If it's really loud, cover your ears and I'll panic and I'll try to turn it down really quickly. If you can't hear it, then we'll just pretend it's not there. So I'm actually going to be covering a whole lot of topics tonight. I'm going to try to kind of pull them underneath like the same umbrella. So bear with me. If I go too fast or if you guys have no idea what I'm talking about, you can make faces at me, do something. I prefer the rolls. I'm really not keen on the chicken. And we'll kind of go from there. So this is pretty much about the future of everything. Not flying cars or teleportation, but kind of everything that's around us right now. Where are things going in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 years? That's futuristic enough to be cool enough for the presentation, and also relevant enough for you guys to kind of get some insight on what's coming down the pipeline very quickly. So this is me. That's how I picture myself. Just kidding. So I'm the founder and CEO of a startup locally called Transformative. I am also a futurist, a technologist, an entrepreneur, author, speaker, and my wife made me a nerd. I expected more laughs than that one, but like a lot of pity there. Is that even better? Yeah. Okay. I should probably move around quick. See what I'm talking about. Okay, so I got started in this virtual reality probably in early 1992, which is a really long time ago. And since then, massively multi-user online role-playing games, virtual worlds. How about I hold the miniature microphone? That would make sense. The one you're picking. Is that better? Yes? Good? Okay, cool. Yeah, I can't hear myself. So virtual world. I was faking it the whole time. I published a massive multi-user online game I licensed from Asia background, also a long time ago. I got involved in augmented reality with a startup around 2007 and a bunch of other stuff. So kind of interactive, immersive media has been my thing. I do other stuff too, but that's kind of my stuff. So I'm also a published author. I wrote MMO Evolution. I criticized the whole online gaming industry. Nobody liked it because it was critical. And I would say contributing author to working through synthetic worlds. I wrote about using augmented reality technologies for crime scene analysis and forensics. So when I was a teenager, I read William Gibson's Neuromancer. And one of the lines in there is where actually he coined the term cyberspace. And he was basically defining what it is. Unthinkable complexity, lines of light ranging in the non-space of the mind, clusters and constellation of data, like city lights receding. And that always struck me as pretty powerful. And then of course, I watched Tron too, and I was like, oh my God, this is completely what I want. So this has been the driving force. One of these days I will experience it. Presents a massive shift in things we're going to see. So we'll be starting with a little bit of convergence for the next couple of years. We're just going to move on to some industry disruption and ultimately transformation of entire industries. So here's the fun slide with a whole lot of things that I'm going to have to define really fast. So this is an acronym CLOUD. AI, AR, MR, VR, XR, IoT, EEG, ML, CD, 5G, Blue, whatever. I'm sure you've heard some of these somewhere before. I had to look up half of them too. I'm not actually going to define each of them, but these are some of the technologies I'm going to be covering. And it was a bit of a challenge trying to figure out how to structure this particular presentation. So I thought, okay, what I'll do is I'll probably go through each of these with some basic examples so we all have kind of a common frame of reference. And then I'm going to come back and kind of show how it all fits together. And then hopefully you'll ask me questions and we'll be good. So one term that's out there, started fairly recently, is one called spatial computing. Does anybody here know what spatial computing is? I can look it up too. Okay, anybody want to guess? No, neither do I. But I'll define it for you. And I think as a subset of that is what I would call spatial intelligence. So spatial computing was kind of popularized by the Magic Leap guys who are doing the cool heads-up display. And it's basically their idea is spatial plus computing equals baseballs. But I think it's actually more than that. When you look at things that are going on right now, everything everywhere is being connected. You have devices and sensors and data and clouds and open data and all these things that are going on. But when you look at things from a location perspective or a GIS perspective or just geolocal, you start adding context and relevance, things become way more interesting. It's one thing for us to use our phones to look up some data, but if we're looking it up in the context of being in this room at this location for this specific event with the people that are nearby, you get a whole other layer of interesting, again, context and relevance. So I think spatial computing is ultimately going to be kind of that, but also with other things, all the IoT devices and again, sensors and smart lights. And when all of this stuff is together and combined, that begins to, I guess, give you fertile ground for doing computing type stuff with data visualization or spatial intelligence, which is kind of like business intelligence, but spatially oriented. So I think spatial computing is going to become a larger term that in some cases will be an umbrella for some of the others, but it's not quite the same as them. It's a little bit different. But we'll figure it out as we move along. Amazing thing. So this is a really big wave. If you see it coming, you can ride it. And if you don't see it coming, it's going to suck pretty bad. I've been there, I've been hit by a couple of waves. I was going to draw a little guy on there and be like, hey, that's me, but I thought that was too cheesy, so and it ruined the pretty picture. But I think this is technology right now. We've had a few other big waves. We went from farming to industrial to technology, and now we're kind of in this like information is everything sort of society. But there's still more things to come. We've got crazy nanotechnology, we've got artificially intelligent, robots coming after us, and a lot of very transformative things coming. But if we can kind of predict the future a little bit and see what's coming, and think about how we can use it now, how we can apply it, and where things are going, then we can benefit. So I'm going to sidebar a little bit and go back to augmented reality and virtual reality, two of my favorite topics. I'm sure everybody here has heard. Has anybody here not heard of either one of the two terms? Okay. So these are what other people are saying about the tech. Goldman Sachs thinks it's going to be a huge market by 2025. Tim Cook, or otherwise known as Tim Apple. You guys do watch the news, that's right. Augmented reality is going to change everything. That's easy for him to say, but given who he is, the amount of just sheer money and resources that Apple is dumping into some of these technologies, it's worth noting. Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook's next big thing is augmented reality. That's a pretty bold statement from Mark after just buying, Oculus Rift and doing the fun stuff with VR there. And then of course, augmented reality is the future of shopping, and a million people in VR. There's a lot of big statements out there. But again, what's interesting is who are making those statements. It's one thing if I say, hey man, it's going to be crazy. But when guys like this say it, and they're backing it up with a tremendous amount of capital and resources, it's worth paying attention to. And when we look at kind of AR and VR now, there's over 100 brands that are doing something like actively with AR for advertising or marketing. You've got companies like DHL or Amazon that are literally, as we speak, using some type of augmented reality experience to help their pickers go through the warehouses to fulfill orders. You've got AR and VR both being used for surgery, medical cases, for planning and preparation, in some cases actual guidance during an operation, training. There's all kinds of things going on that people really generally aren't aware of because it's not really consumer-oriented or out front, but there's a lot of mature technologies and a lot of pretty traditional companies that are using it. So things are about to get crazy in the next couple of slides. This is where I'm setting it up to be like super exciting, so we should go. This is great. And that's the best picture I could find. I think it's funny. So please fasten your seatbelt. I had a lot of coffee last night. Oh, is it? Oh, wow.
Perfectly fitting. You could wear that outfit.
Wow, good. It was a lot of work, let me tell you. So yes, that's me. Okay, so XR equals AR plus VR and IoT, all that fun sort of thing. So I tried to, Chris gets it. I tried to think a little clever. Einstein is not an idiot. But again, this will all make sense here shortly. So again, what I want to do is kind of do a quick overview of some of these technologies and examples, how it all ties together, what does it mean for you, and then Q&A. I'm really looking forward to the questions. So again, back to spatial computing. It's context and relevance, but it's really about exactly where you are, what is at this location, and how we can bring it all together and make more meaningful experiences or solutions or applications for the use of technology. And we take data, which becomes information, but then we ultimately want it to become knowledge. Knowledge is very important. It all boils down to who you are, where you are, and what you're doing. If you can get those three things kind of together, a whole lot of magical worlds open up, which you can do with that data, and that ultimately becomes spatial intelligence. IoT is one of our first categories, the Internet of Things. So according to an Ericsson Mobility Report, in 2016 there were 400 million connected devices. Last year was the first year that there were more connected devices than there were smartphones. And by 2022 there should be 1.5 billion connected devices. And that's everything from your smart TV to all kinds of sensors and other things. So who in here would call yourself an IoT specialist? Or you're actively involved in IoT to some degree in your field?
Actively involved.
Passively involved. Reads a lot about it. Okay.
So that has something to do with this, yes.
So IoT is basically, as I said, the Internet of Things, and it can be anything. And this is one of my favorite examples. So this is what we call a Raspberry Pi.
Is it Pi Day?
It's also Pi Day. Thank you for reminding me. Completely unrelated, but yesterday is the 14th of February. Yeah. So a Raspberry Pi, this is about 35 bucks. And it's a powerful little computer that is crazy extensible. It's got an HDMI out on here. It's got 4 USB ports, an Ethernet port, and a whole bunch of other sort of things. The DIY crowd loves to do it yourself and make all kinds of really cool stuff. But these are also great in enterprise and retail and all kinds of other uses where you can pretty much plug anything into this. You can make it a server, you can make it a streamer, you've got Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. It's just crazy. It's only $35. So IoT, look out for it. It's pretty cool. So again, Internet of Things. This is probably the most commonly known topic that I have on here, and I'm not going to go a whole lot further in terms of defining what it is, because I think it's pretty, you may as well define what the Internet is. Does anybody here not know what the Internet is? Hey, you'd be surprised. There's one in every crowd. Okay, we're moving on. Computer vision. This is the best picture I could find out. Computer vision is a very, very, very broad sort of topic. This is what keeps your Tesla from wrecking into the car in front of you. This is what uses your phone to help focus on what you're trying to take a picture of. All kinds of stuff. So object recognition, 3D scanning, 3D mapping. Helps robots find you when they're looking for you. All kinds of stuff. And it even goes as far as like object recognition, which is really important in a lot of different use cases. Does anybody get the not a hot dog joke? No? Oh, one guy? Okay, never mind. I'll explain it to you later if you really want. So here's a couple examples of computer vision. So on the left we have a variant of what's called a SLAM, simultaneous localization and mapping. And it basically uses monocular or stereo vision. Basically input from a camera, and it looks for edge detection, looks for some planes, sort of thing, and basically builds a temporary, what they call a point cloud. So if we were to be running it on a device over here, it would look for the edge of the table and start dropping down little reference points in 3D space, and I can ultimately get kind of a vague sense of where things are located at. And then you could then use the software to do other sort of fun stuff. On the right is something a little more advanced. I don't remember the method for that, but that's kind of what you would get if you whipped out like a LiDAR, scanning laser and kind of aimed it down a hallway or some other kind of thing. So in these particular cases, the computer vision is basically being used to understand something about the environment as opposed to something like object recognition. Here's another case where this is where computer vision is actively being used. It recognizes car, motorcycle, SUV, stoplight, and not only does it recognize them in real time, but also tracking where they're going. If we were to hop on a plane and fly over to China, this would be doing face matching as you're going down escalators at the airport, checking your passport, identifying who you are. It's pretty scary, but this is the kind of thing that one of the applications for computer vision. And I'm going to pause now because it gets really technical after that. We're going to switch over to one of my other favorites, augmented reality. So augmented reality is basically taking some type of digital media and overlaying it on the real world, usually through a video source, or if we look to the future, like Minority Report or whatever, we have transparent lenses and all the work is done through. So I can have 3D data like your names floating over your head, which would be really useful for me because I'm terrible with names. You never want to introduce your wife with the wrong name. So one of the subsets of augmented reality is what they call mixed reality. If you're a semantic guy and you're really keen on definitions, it's a big difference. If you're a regular person, they're the same thing. They're interchangeable. The main difference is AR is data and mixed reality is really blending in 3D objects with the world around it. But everybody just says AR, augmented, so we're going to stick with that. So what are some cool examples of augmented reality? This slide is a slow one. Oh, there's Pac-Man. So we've got Avatar here in the bottom right, Pac-Man in the upper right, and some other sort of fun things. And they're all kind of different. There's a 3D there's a gorilla over there in the chair. There's a cool anime character. So it's basically you're taking digital content and placing it in the real world and giving it a sense of actually being there, which is kind of cool, and gamers love this stuff. But one of the questions we want to dive into tonight is how is this useful for IT or technology or enterprise or some other markets? But these are pretty cool and compelling examples of kind of what it would look like. One of the ways to experience AR is through your phone or through a tablet, but also through these really cool wearables. So in the upper left, we've got Magic Leap's, $5 trillion sort of experiment there. I still can't believe how much money they raised. Then we've got Microsoft, that's HoloLens 1. They just announced the HoloLens 2. They're kind of doubling down on AR. And then I think at the Mobile World Congress about a month or so ago, the tiny company came out of nowhere, it's ex-HoloLens people, by the way, with something called Unreal, and apparently it's got better stats, and they did it for a couple $1 million, which is kind of crazy. And then more recently, I just discovered another one called Letinar, which seems to be best of breed, which is kind of cool. But guess who's coming out supposedly with Wearable Displays next year? Which is either going to be crazy awesome or it's going to suck, but we'll see. The point though is that Apple is making that move, and that's important. So here's an example of what Letinar can do with their displays. It wasn't real either. How cool is that? So I'll show it to you again because it's amazing. So one of the tricky parts with doing AR wearable displays is making things look solid because just how the technology works is difficult. But this is probably one of the most impressive demos I've ever seen, and that was the lens that they did it on. So it's great. But this is the type of thing that's coming very soon. So moving on, here's an industrial case. This is not a video, but what we have here, so basically some sensor somewhere is tracking all the data tied to each one of these pieces of machinery, sending it off to a cloud somewhere, and then some guy on the floor with a pair of wearable displays or a smart helmet or a tablet is walking along, and that's using some computer vision to figure out where it is and what it's looking at, and then it's grabbing data from the cloud and positioning it properly. So all these things kind of come together to give a guy for this sort of experience. And this is really handy because without this, you've got to go up to each one of them with a bunch of other machinery and do a bunch of testing and all that sort of stuff. But here you've got an at a glance plus all the data you need. The really cool thing with something like AR and again spatial computing tying to that location is that you can also if you know where something is, you can start associating other content and media. So if I know where this particular device is and I know where I am, and I've got a nice little cloud connection, there's nothing to keep me from adding on a maintenance history or maintenance manuals, or how much does this thing cost, or where did I get it from, how long has it been here, all the relevant data that you might need to fix it or maintain it, or maybe you're the new guy, okay? Well, it'd be nice to know that the best way to get this thing to work is to kick it in the lower left and not have to spend a whole lot of money doing something else. So when you can start linking data to things in the real world, it gets kind of interesting. This is an example from Dubai.
To achieve this,
Audio.
Deva has now adopted the industrial augmented reality helmet.
It's pretty short.
This is one of the most advanced augmented reality helmets available today. It enables access to real-time data, which gives situational awareness to workers, making their work easier and faster, but providing a range of unique tools to create a much safer working environment.
Third whole camera, right?
With the Augmented Era helmet, Deva's technical oracles can use real-time augmented instructions and support to minimize errors and make more efficient use of the time and effort. By constantly upgrading itself.
Okay, so this is
To achieve this, Deva has now
so that was pretty
adopted
cool. Let me talk about, I don't know how to pause that looping video. So a lot of what I described is shown there. This is something that they're using every day in Dubai, water, electric. That's here, it's in the world right now. It's not necessarily mass market, everybody's not using it, but it's here and it's available. And this sort of thing is just going to continue to get more critical mass, get more use cases, but it's happening. VR is another short, I'll keep short, but everybody here knows what VR is, virtual reality. Anybody see Ready Player One? The book was way better, I promise. So I was struggling to kind of find a really good example to show off VR because it's kind of so well known. So I just grabbed a nice peaceful little video of some Van Gogh's Midnight Cafe. The thing about VR is it takes you and puts you somewhere else. AR is very much the world around you. VR is generally you somewhere else. And it's immersive, which is kind of cool. And being able to do things like explore painting is pretty crazy, if you ask me. I probably should have picked something more upbeat because now I'm getting sleepy. But yeah, just like another 40 seconds of this, I'm going to skip it, but you get the general idea. So zoom. So Ready Player One. One of the other big words out there is this word called the metaverse. And all the metaverse is generally all the VR things together. There's this idea of all the data, all the virtual worlds, all the cool places, linkable and be able to travel from one to another, to another, to another. That's all. It's a nice, fun buzzword, cool little word. But generally, if somebody says the metaverse, they basically mean all that stuff together. But nobody's actually linked it all yet because there's a lot of technical issues with all that sort of stuff, which I won't get into. But this is a term you should be familiar with. And then we get to the really fun AI. So AI in general is artificial intelligence. Of course, we've got other topics like machine learning and artificial life. So I don't even know where to start with this one. AI is such a huge topic that we're going to go really quickly through it. Again, people kind of familiar with it. So the use cases here, again, we're talking about the future, what's coming down the pipeline. One of the first ones are avatars and holograms. So I came up with a fun little phrase, artificial life intelligent agents. And that is basically combining AI with fun things like holograms. So how cool would it be if when you were talking to Alexa, instead of just talking to a random device in the other room, it was literally a hologram standing in front of you that was reacting to you? If you've ever saw Total Recall, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was the tennis instructor, right? It's one thing if Alexa says, oh, you learn the backstroke. But it's cooler if Alexa is actually sitting there in front of you in a tennis outfit, showing you the exact swing, or maybe it's golf, or whatever. But a lot of the cool things are happening in the back end in terms of natural language processing, voice recognition. There's a lot of really tremendously cool stuff out there. But when you give it a body and the ability to kind of manipulate and move around your environment, it gets pretty insane. So imagine, this is also a story about it. So imagine if we had holograms and avatars all over the place. You could walk into a museum, instead of listening to a little guy speak in your ear, it'd be cool if the guy was there in period where telling you about the thing, or it'd be kind of freaky if the dinosaur bones started talking to you, but it'd still kind of cool. Or going downtown to the cool historic locations. Sure, you can read the sign, but wouldn't it be cooler if there was also 2 or 3 minutes worth of a hologram teaching you about the place and showing you things? But how much more cooler would it be if you could actually ask questions and get really good responses back? The state of the art of things like chatbots and AI is really sophisticated now, and that's not too far off. The technology pieces are there. Nobody's really just kind of stitched them together and deployed it yet, but that's coming very soon. And of course, people are worried about automation and robots and that sort of thing. I think you're going to start seeing more and more chatbots that are getting avatars and ultimately holographic bodies taking over customer service, hospitality, entertainment, even education. So if you're in any of those fields, I would start looking into how to code AI. Just so moving on a little bit more. When you make these things location and context aware, it gets really nuts. It's one thing if I've got a cool avatar here talking to me, Alexa, but how much more so if Alexa as a hologram is aware of where the table is, or where my TV is, or where my food is, or any of these other sort of things. So when you've got an avatar that can actually navigate around an environment, A, that's kind of cool, but B, that's also the same sort of tech that the evil robots are going to need to also track you down. Be very careful how we develop these things, it's important. Another paragraph on there? I do. So, and even taking it another step further, again, kind of bringing in all these technologies together, when we start adding in data and sensors from IoT devices, now not only does your holographic Alexa know a lot about you and interact with you in your environment, but now he or she or it is able to tap into other data sources to now give you much more relevant and contextual data. Hey, you need to buy some milk. Or no, don't touch that, it's got an electrical short in it. Or no, you're not allowed to watch that on TV. So moving on. So this is a Hatsune Miku. This is a hologram singing to several thousand people in concert. To date, she's sung over 100,000 songs. She's grossed about $120 million the first couple of years she was in existence. And she is crazy popular in Japan. She's been for more than 10 years. They treat her like she's a real star, like a real sort of person. People actually pay to go to concerts to watch holograms. How cool is that? It's also kind of weird, but it's a big deal. Oh my gosh.
Hello everyone, I'm an English artificial intelligence anchor. This is my very first day in Xingwon's agency.
Has anybody not seen this or heard of this?
Yeah.
This is crazy and this is real. This was a couple months ago, I think this came out. So that's another hologram right there. Well, not really hologram, but he's a 3D avatar, and they basically type what they want him to say, and he says it, and he's the
Hello
news guy.
everyone, I'm an English artificial intelligence
Let me do
anchor.
that.
This is my very first day in Xingwon's agency.
And then they switched over to this, it's like, oh, ha, there's the guy on the left that's actually telling him what to say, and they're like, no, that's just another one of the AI guys. Just kind of start. But these are the type of things that are happening. You guys seen the last Star Wars movie? Where Carrie Fisher died before it was finished? They completed some of her scenes using digital tech. So it's crazy. You can't always believe what you see anymore. And then we come on to another topic, which is augmented and virtual reality together. And I call it XR because X marks the spot and it's easy. Because I got tired of telling people, hi, I do XR, AR, VR, IoT, blah, blah, blah. So basically, it's a seamless blend between the two. If I have the real world and then I have AR where I'm augmenting it with data and cool 3D stuff, and then VR is me somewhere else, what happens if we kind of make it a vertical stack and I've got real and then kind of digital, but then if I copy all this into a one-to-one sort of 3D mirror of it all, of me being in Fantasyland, what if this whole room was in 3D as a VR environment? So somebody remote could log into the VR with a little avatar, and then in AR, we display their avatars here, and then vice versa. If I know where every one of you are in this room, there's nothing to keep me from having an avatar view in the VR environment. This opens up all kinds of fun and scary sort of things. So how does all this work? Well, this brings us back to some of the computer vision stuff. You have to understand your environment first. So using any of a dozen different techniques, you can go through and basically build out a 3D map of your environment. You can use computer vision, like the slant stuff I mentioned earlier. In the upper right-hand corner, this is a cool little app that you can download for your iPad called Magic Plan. You basically turn it on and start pointing to each of the corners of the room and touch the screen and map it out, hit enter, and bang, floor plan. It's accurate to a couple of inches. Or other areas. And then, has anybody heard of Matterport? If you're in real estate, you might have heard about these guys. No? So it's a multi-lens sort of camera, sits on a thing and spins around and gives you a really nice 3D photorealistic scan of the room that you're in. And then you can stitch them together and get a cool floor plan, which is great for virtual tours. So this is how you get there, and this is pretty common. And with the new phones coming out, like the Samsung Galaxy, the next iPhone, you're going to be able to use some of this scanning and mapping on your own phone and contribute it as an open source to whoever's doing all the mapping stuff. So here's an example of a Matterport scan. This is actual location, I don't know which city, but that's literally 3401 South Clement Street. So this is where, again, I'm trying to bring all these things together. So this is a real world scan, but the virtual piece. So what does it look like if we animate it? I really should have picked better music. So this is a medical center, and we're basically zooming in, and oh look, somebody's taken a Matterport scan of the place and linked it all together. But then they started adding in some other things like labels for each of the rooms, which is really kind of cool, which should pop up here in a second. But now, if we also bring in IoT devices and take that data from where it's positioned at, and then overlay it on this as well, now you're getting a whole other set of business intelligence or spatial intelligence, because more data, more visualization. And then if I'm tracking people, or if I'm tracking supplies, or I'm tracking medicine, or whatever, things are much easier to find, locate, manage logistics. Of course, zooming in. This is how great a Matterport scan can do. It's not nice. Turn around. Pretty photorealistic, isn't it? So it's kind of like Google Earth, but it's which kind of brings us to augmented smart cities. So we take all of these things together and start thinking about what happens if we get a one-to-one digital map of a city or a town or building. And then we start bringing in all the OpenGov data sources, all the IoT sensors and smart building and all this stuff together. It gives us a really cool simulation of that city, which we can then use for all kinds of things, whether it's consumer, or we got avatars running around, or giant robots, or aliens, or even like smart city management. So in this particular case here, they've mapped out a section of the city, they've overlaid a lot of data, and they've also integrated other devices like CCTV cameras. So a city manager or maintenance guy, whatever, can pull this up. This is a VR experience, but we can easily translate this to AR. They accessed one of the street cameras. Again, if you've got the data and you can consume it and view it in a way like this, it's much easier to understand and turn it into actionable knowledge or insight. So again, future vision here, when you start combining all of these individual technologies together, a lot of different opportunities open up. Whether it's tracking stuff in supply chain, helping you find something in a warehouse, identifying something that's going to blow up before it blows up because it needs maintenance, tracking your employees, or somebody's, that's a good example I like to use. So I did some consulting for a company a few years ago that was building a smart helmet. They're called Foresight. Basically, they wanted a helmet that was kind of modular, so you could switch out different sensors, like an impact sensor, a heat sensor, one that would track your perspiration, all that sort of stuff for construction environments. And then they had a cool little visor that would drop down with some basic AR overlays. And one of their use cases was oil rigs for safety. So generally speaking, if you're on an oil rig and something hits you in the head and you get knocked out, well, good luck to you. But if you get the cool smart helmet on, you'd be knocked out on the floor, but it would send off an alert to somebody like, hey, Robert's missing. He just had a head impact alert, which is great, but you still couldn't find the guy. You knew he was down, so you're looking. But if you've got a nice 3D simulation of that oil rig, and you're tracking the position of all your assets, i.e. me, because you can say, oh my gosh, Robert got hit in the head, he's behind boiler number 3 on the 2nd floor. Well, I would really appreciate being tracked by the technology at that point, because you're getting me faster, which then reduces my time off the job, hopefully reduce industries, which will reduce risk, and it'll be better for insurance. But that's the kind of, again, when you look at these technologies individually, they're cool, but if you start stitching them together, they're way more powerful and much more transformative. So all these things over on the right are basically some movies, some books, some anime, because anime is cool. I'm a nerd. That if you're really interested in some of these technologies, they're great to read, and some of them are better than the nonfiction stuff because they give a better view of the future, and what guys like me are desperately trying to build so we can go inside the computer. So there are some challenges and opportunities here. I don't know if this one I saw you or not. This one doesn't. So this one's called hyperreality. I would compare it more of a nightmare. This is what happens when you don't really think about what you're developing and it's just kind of, it's out there in the forest. It's going to be kind of crazy. So, well, this guy is having a really bad day on the bus. This is what the risk is. But each of these challenges are basically opportunities for developers or for companies or anybody that's trying to look ahead to where all these technologies are going and where the opportunities are to get in first and develop things properly or to get a head start on other people. Whether it's privacy or security, it's going to be huge. User interfaces are going to be a thing. Right now, we still think in terms of windows and pages, and we need to get out of that. If we're dealing with 3D data, 3D space, and things with depth and shape and form, we have to change how we think about interacting with media. And of course, commerce or identity, how do you do a spam is going to be a thing. And ultimately, who owns digital airspace? Who's getting paid for all this? Who gets to own it? Who gets to control it? These are very big questions in the industry that only a few people are really trying to think about and solve. Most of the industry is still working on how do you do the thing? How is the hardware going to work? How is the software going to work? How do I get better tracking? But these other user experience or solutions and application sort of perspectives, I think is still very much a wide open field and area for people that want to get in and innovate and be the leaders. So final thoughts. Everything is converging, and I think we're close to a tipping point. Again, any one of these technologies, multi-trillion-dollar industries, but when you start combining them and thinking differently, you have to step out of the box and look at it from a different perspective. What happens if this plus this plus this plus this? What does that now allow me to do? What other applications can I do? What problems can I solve? I think that gives you a different perspective. There's so many guys out there that start with, I have a cool tech, what can I do with it? But if you step back and go, okay, here's this and here's the things that it can do. Where can I apply this at? What problems can I solve? You end up with a much more efficient way to do things. So one story I like to tell people, when I was younger, I read a book about chess and business. And in the book, the guy was describing the difference between a really good chess player and a chess grandmaster. He said most really good chess players think ahead 3, 4, 5 moves, or if they're really smart, maybe in 6. Said, and they adapt along the way. That's why they usually beat you. They think ahead and they adapt. He said, but a grandmaster generally sits down, sizes you up, figures out your personality, and thinks about how he's going to completely and totally obliterate and destroy you, and what the board is going to look like when he's done making your day bad. And everything he does along the way adapts to what you do, and he thinks ahead compared to what you do. But he's always going towards this end goal. He knows exactly what it's going to look like. Whereas a really good player does not know how the game is going to end, even though they're good and they're thinking ahead. And so I thought, wow, that's kind of a brain, like the light bulbs went off. So when I think about the future and technology, I generally try to think ahead. What are things going to look like in 5 or 10 years? But more importantly, how are they going to work? What's that user experience going to be? How are these technologies going to be used in enterprise or human resources or sales or customer service? And then if I can wrap my head around what's possible and how it might work, then I can start deconstructing it and coming backwards, go, okay, to do this, I need AI. To do that, I need IoT. To do this, I need some kind of advanced teleportation device or whatever. But you kind of understand the path to get there. And that then helps you think ahead of your competition, ahead of where the industry is. And then you can kind of anticipate it a little bit more because there's kind of a logical path to get to some of these places. And if you're thinking about it from the destination backwards, as opposed to blindly selling forward, you're going to have a big leg up on everybody else. So anyway, so individually, they're all pretty awesome thoughts. Together, these things are pretty amazing. Well, I just wanted to say that on tape. But don't let the shiny objects or the hype fool you. A lot of times AR and VR is just a shiny novelty. It's added on to something else. It wasn't really thought through. But if you can get past the shininess and really start thinking about what does this technology mean, it'll give you a much different perspective. One good example here is AR is considered the 8th mass media, following TV, cinema, radio, paper, it's on the web even. But not VR, not AI, not IoT. None of those things meet the requirements to be a mass media. And I could probably count on maybe one or two hands the people that I know in the industry that actually think about this on a regular basis. What is AR if it's a mass media sort of communications platform, as opposed to something that's fun and sexy for 5 minutes? And if you can think about AR from that perspective, it's a bit of a brain twister, but it really helps you understand the technology more. And then again, with the other technologies coming involved, it's a huge brain explosion. So this is serious business, and we're about to go through a huge evolution. Again, there's so much going on right now between Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Facebook. I mean, straight across the board. There's a lot of companies investing tremendous amounts of capital and wealth and resources into AI and AR and VR and IoT and machine learning, and pretty much everything else is up there. And while we've kind of been in this quiet period for a few years, cool demos here and there, I really believe that probably by the time 2020, 2021 rolls around, things that we think are fantasy today are going to be fairly common. And then probably in like a 5-year range, a lot of this stuff is going to be like mass market. We're kind of in the innovator, early adopter stage right now. I really believe that the next probably 12 to 18 months is going to change a lot. Of course, Apple coming out with their wearable displays will be huge. Niantic's Pokemon Go is they're coming out with their sequel this summer. It's going to be Harry Potter, which is going to be crazy nut though. But these are things that are happening, and if you look for these markers of activity and where companies are going, it's not too hard to see that there is a crazy amount of opportunity out there. Mind blown. I'm hoping these pictures will distract you from giving me really tough questions. I know I covered a lot and hit you with a lot of really high-level kind of topics. I really wanted to make sure that you guys at least had some visual examples of what some of this stuff looks like, and kind of get an idea of where things could go and where they're being used outside of the normal fun 3D sort of stuff. There's some pretty powerful things that are going on. But as long as I have time and I haven't over-talked, I really want to answer questions because some of this stuff is fairly complicated, and I'm curious as to what you guys think. Or tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me how it's going. It's good, sir.
All right, fellow nerd, Star Trek fan. When I see this overlay where all these diagnostics come up in industry over machines and things, first thing I want to do is be able to control it from that virtual reality perspective. Do you see technology following closely behind where you can manipulate those images, which then control the machines?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's already a few demos that are out there. If you follow me on LinkedIn or email me, I can always send you guys this stuff. It's actually not very hard. If you've got like a lovely Raspberry Pi, $35, connected to like a lamp or something. There's some cool things you can do in AR or VR, just linking it all. So you push the button. Actually, let me step back. So one example I like to use of this seamless blend is think of all these gamer nerds playing World of Warcraft, going on a raid somewhere. They forgot the key to the castle, they can't get in. So, okay, well, I've got to get my car, drive down to the mall, do some cool things in AR, whatever, solve a puzzle and push a red button on the wall that's digital AR. But if you know this action's going on, it's just it's still a switch at the end of the day. That can trigger something else to ultimately unlock that door. So in the same sort of fashion, if I'm in a VR environment, that's again a one-to-one kind of scale of this right here, and there's a lamp and a button. If I push that virtual button in my virtual avatar, it's just a message to my Raspberry Pi saying, hey, flip the switch, and then you get the switch. Similar sort of fashion in an AR environment, I walk up to a piece of machinery, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. Well, instead of me getting in the back and messing with some dials, I should be able to just switch some sliders. You're basically just changing the mode of interface. All the other connectivity stuff, it's already out there. It's just nobody's really taking the time to go, what would be the easiest way to really make this interactive? But if you think about like, controlling your home lights from your phone now with the security app, it's the same sort of thing. You're just switching out the apps for some other sort of experience. But that connectivity is there. Yes?
So some of these technologies have been around for 30 or 40 years. Is the point that they've reached a certain level of maturity and the combination of them that's causing the tipping point, or what?
It's a whole lot of small things all at one time. So now we've got the new 5G is coming out. That's potentially going to solve some bandwidth issues. We've got the new Bluetooth standard was just announced that's going to be really focusing in on accuracy of positioning of hardware as it relates to other things. A year and a half, 2 years ago, Google came out with AR Core.